The signal. Dr. Elena Santos stood motionless before the massive holographic display, her dark eyes fixed on the pattern that had haunted her for the past 3 weeks. The signal pulsed with an eerily perfect rhythm, too precise to be natural, too complex to be coincidental. In her 20 years at the Deep Space Listening Array, she had never seen anything like it. "Play it again," she commanded, and the AI obliged. The three-dimensional representation of the signal filled the room, its mathematical beauty making her breath catch for the 100th time. This wasn't just a message, it was a cry for help. The year was 2157, and humanity had spent the last decade adjusting to life as the newest members of the Galactic Confederation. Their entry had come with strict conditions: no expansion beyond Sol, limited access to advanced technology, and absolute adherence to the Confederation's prime directive of non-interference. Earth's representatives had signed the agreement, knowing it was better than isolation, but few were happy with humanity's designated role as galactic juveniles. Dr. Santos, her assistant, Kai Chen, appeared at her side, tablet in hand. "The Confederation's Scientific Advisory Board has responded to our inquiry." Elena's jaw tightened. She already knew what they would say, but she had to hear it. "Go ahead." "They acknowledge receipt of our analysis, but maintain that under Section 7 of the Non-Interference Protocols, we are forbidden from responding to or investigating the signal further." Kai's voice carried the same frustration she felt. "They classify the Ardani system as a restricted zone due to ongoing natural extinction events." Natural extinction events. Elena's fingers curled into fists. There was nothing natural about the desperation encoded in that signal. The Ardani, whoever they were, hadn't just broadcast a distress call. They had embedded their entire history, their culture, their knowledge into the transmission. It was a civilization's last testament, a digital message in a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean. "They're dying out there, Kai," she whispered. "Their star is going nova centuries before their calculations predicted. They have the technology to save themselves, but their planetary defense grid was damaged by a solar flare. They just need help getting off-world." "The Confederation's position is clear," Kai replied, though his tone suggested he shared her disgust. "They believe that interfering with natural extinction events disrupts the galaxy's evolutionary process. They'll document the Ardani's passing for their archives, nothing more." Elena turned away from the display, walking to the window that overlooked the array's vast field of radio telescopes. In the distance, the sun was setting behind the Chilean mountains, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Somewhere, across the gulf of space, another sun was preparing to destroy everything in its reach. "Get me Admiral Chen," she said suddenly. Kai looked up sharply. "Elena." The Admiral was forced to retire after opposing the Confederation's restrictions on human fleet movements. He's been out of contact for months. A slight smile crossed Elena's face. "That's exactly why I need to speak with him. The Confederation may be content to watch a civilization die, but humanity has never been good at following rules we don't believe in." She turned back to face the pulsing signal. The Ardani trusted that someone would hear them, would care enough to help. They were right. They just didn't know it would be the species the Confederation considers too primitive and emotional to be trusted with real power. "What you're suggesting?" Kai's voice trailed off as he processed the implications. "If we're caught, it won't just be career suicide. The Confederation could revoke Earth's membership, impose sanctions, or worse. Then we better not get caught." Elena's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Humanity joined the galactic community hoping to find wisdom among the stars. Instead, we found bureaucrats and cowards who've forgotten what it means to feel responsibility for others. Maybe it's time we showed them what Earth's primitive emotions can accomplish. She gestured at the holographic display, and the signal's complex patterns spun through the air like a dance of mathematics and light. "The Ardani didn't just send a distress call, Kai. They sent us everything. Their technical specifications, their cultural database, even their genetic records. They trust whoever receives this to preserve not just their lives, but their entire civilization. The Confederation sees that trust as a burden to be archived. I see it as a gift and an obligation. Kai was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll arrange a secure channel to the Admiral. But Alina, he paused at the door. How do you plan to get around the Confederation's monitoring of our communications and shipyards? Alina's smile widened slightly. The Confederation restricted our access to their technology, so we developed our own. They think we're centuries behind because they only see what we show them. But humans have always been good at keeping secrets, especially when lives depend on it. As Kai left to make the arrangements, Alina turned back to the signal. In its mathematical rhythms, she could almost hear the voices of a civilization reaching out across the stars, choosing hope over despair. The Confederation had forgotten that advanced technology wasn't the true measure of a species' worth. It was what you chose to do with it that mattered. Hold on, she whispered to the distant Ardani. Help is coming. And after we save you, maybe we can start fixing this broken galaxy together. Breaking chains. Admiral James Chen's underground facility beneath the Martian ice caps wasn't what Alina had expected. Rather than a hidden military base, she found herself in what looked like a cutting-edge research laboratory. Holographic displays lined the walls, showing ship designs that made the Confederation's advanced vessels look primitive by comparison. "Welcome to Project Phoenix," the Admiral said, his weathered face breaking into a smile. Unlike the official records that showed him as a bitter retired officer, he seemed energized, purposeful. "I assume you're here about the Ardani signal." Alina shouldn't have been surprised that he knew. "How long have you been monitoring their transmissions?" "Since the first pulse." He gestured to a detailed stellar map. "We've had stealth probes in their system for weeks. The Confederation's assessment is correct. Their star will go nova in less than 6 months. What they don't know is that we've been preparing for something like this for years." He led her through chambers filled with technology she had never seen before. Scientists and engineers from a dozen nations worked at stations that seemed to defy her understanding of physics. After first contact, Chen explained, "We realized the Confederation wasn't going to share their advanced technology, so we took a different approach. We developed our own." Alina finished, beginning to understand. All those trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, were opportunities to study their tech without them realizing it. Chen nodded. "But more importantly, we found others who shared our frustrations with the Confederation's policies." A door slid open, revealing a chamber that made Alina gasp. Aliens of various species worked alongside humans, their forms both familiar and exotic. She recognized several, representatives of younger races like humanity, restricted and patronized by the Confederation's ancient powers. "Meet our coalition," Chen said proudly. "The Rix," he pointed to a crystalline being manipulating energy fields with graceful tentacles, developed quantum tunneling technology far beyond what the Confederation possesses, but they were forced to hide it. "The Ven," he indicated a group of avian humanoids, created artificial gravity systems that make inertial dampeners obsolete. "And the Meridians," he gestured to beings that seemed to shift between light and solid form. "They're the ones who helped us perfect our stealth systems." All these advances, Alina marveled, right under the Confederation's nose. "But why reveal this to me now?" "Because the Ardani signal changes everything." Chen's expression grew serious. "We've been building this coalition, developing these technologies, knowing that someday we'd need to challenge the Confederation's authority. The Ardani situation isn't just a humanitarian crisis. It's an opportunity to show the galaxy there's a better way." He brought up a holographic display of a ship design that took Alina's breath away. Sleek and organic in form, it incorporated technology she had glimpsed throughout the facility. "This is the Phoenix, first of her class, and the most advanced rescue vessel ever constructed. We built her to save civilizations, not watch them die. The Confederation has sensor nets throughout that sector," Alina pointed out. How do you plan to get past them? A new voice answered, melodic and inhuman. The same way we've been hiding our advances for years. A meridian emerged from what Alina had thought was empty air, its form crystallizing into solidity. We don't fight the sensors. We make them lie. Chen nodded. The Meridians developed quantum field manipulation to a degree the Confederation thinks impossible. Their technology doesn't just hide ships. It creates false readings, phantom energy signatures that make our vessels look like natural phenomena. Alina's mind raced with the implications, the cultural exchange programs, the trade missions. They weren't just for studying their technology. You were positioning assets throughout Confederation space, supply caches, emergency facilities, and most importantly, allies. Chen's smile had an edge now. There are many in the Confederation, even among the elder races, who've grown uncomfortable with its policies. They've been helping us quietly, waiting for the right moment to support change. And now we save the Ardani, Alina said, understanding dawning. Not just because it's right, but because it will force the Confederation to confront its failures. Exactly. Chen brought up the Ardani signal, its complex patterns dancing in the air. Their distress call included detailed scans of their star's deterioration. According to our analysis, we have 4 months before Nova, not 6 as the Confederation claims. They're deliberately underestimating the timeline to ensure no one attempts a rescue. Alina felt cold anger at the calculation of it. They're not just letting the Ardani die. They're making sure no one else can save them. Which is why we move now. Chen gestured, and the facility came alive with increased activity. We've accelerated our timetable. The Phoenix will launch in 72 hours, along with support vessels from our coalition allies. Dr. Santos. He turned to her. We need someone who understands the Ardani signal intimately, who can communicate with them when we arrive. Will you join us? Alina looked around at the assembled beings, humans and aliens working together, united by compassion and a desire for change. This was what she had dreamed of when humanity first reached the stars, not the sterile hierarchy of the Confederation, but a true coalition of equals, each contributing their strengths to a greater whole. When do we start? She asked. The Meridian's form sparkled with what might have been amusement. We already have. The question is, are you ready to help us rewrite the rules of the galaxy? Alina thought of the pulsing signal that had led her here, of a civilization reaching out in hope across the stars. More than ready, she said. It's time the galaxy remembered what it means to care. Operation Lighthouse. The Phoenix didn't break Earth's atmosphere so much as slip through it. Alina watched from the bridge as the planet fell away beneath them, the ship's quantum field manipulation making their departure invisible to both conventional sensors and the naked eye. It felt appropriate. Humanity's greatest technological achievement, sneaking away like a thief in the night. Meridian stealth systems operating at full capacity, reported Commander Sarah Chen, the Admiral's daughter and the Phoenix's tactical officer. Confederation monitoring stations are registering only normal background radiation. Alina studied the bridge crew, a mix of humans and coalition species, each chosen for their expertise and their commitment to the mission. The Rix navigator, Crystal Song in Darkness, manipulated the quantum tunneling drive controls with fluid grace. A Ven weapons officer, whose name translated roughly to Swiftwing, monitored the ship's defensive systems. They worked together with the ease of a team that had trained extensively for this moment. Multiple vessels detected matching our emergence vector, Sarah announced. Confederation patrol fleet on routine sweep. Time to intercept, 12 minutes. Admiral Chen, commanding the mission from his position on the bridge, simply nodded. Proceed as planned. Signal the support fleet to maintain position. Alina watched in fascination as the Phoenix executed its deception. Instead of trying to avoid the patrol fleet, they adjusted course to pass directly through it. The Meridian stealth technology didn't just hide them. It fractured their signature into dozens of subtle distortions, each matching known patterns of stellar phenomena. To the Confederation's sensors, they would appear as nothing more than a series of routine gravitational eddies. Patrol fleet passing within 5,000 kilometers, Sarah reported calmly. No deviation in their course or scan patterns. They threaded through the heart of the Confederation fleet like ghosts, close enough that Elena could see the massive warships through the bridge viewport. The contrast between the sleek, organic lines of the Phoenix and the angular, brutalist architecture of the Confederation vessels was striking. It represented everything about the difference in their approaches: evolution versus stagnation, adaptation versus rigid adherence to tradition. Once clear of the patrol, Chen ordered their first quantum jump. The Phoenix's drive was unlike anything in known space. Instead of pushing through reality, it found the places where space naturally folded and slipped between them. There was no flash of light, no surge of acceleration. Reality simply shifted, and they were elsewhere. "Jump complete," Crystal Song announced. "We have cleared the Confederation's primary sensor net, beginning Stage 2 of Operation Lighthouse." The support fleet emerged from their own stealth positions, vessels from a dozen different species, each incorporating technologies their peoples had been forced to hide. They moved in perfect coordination, forming a protective screen around the Phoenix as they began their race against time. Elena turned her attention to the data streaming in from their long-range sensors. The Ardeni system was already showing signs of the coming catastrophe. Their star's corona writhed with increasing instability, while massive solar flares lashed out at the inhabited worlds. "Their planetary shields are failing faster than predicted," she reported, analyzing the readings. The latest flare damaged 3 more generator nodes. They'd got maybe 2 weeks of protection left, not the month we estimated. Chen's expression remained steady, but his eyes hardened. The Confederation knew. They deliberately provided false data to ensure no rescue could be mounted in time. He turned to the communications station. "Send the signal. It's time our other allies played their part." Across Confederation space, carefully placed operatives began their coordinated action. Sensor stations experienced mysterious malfunctions. Communication relays developed convenient delays. Patrol routes were subtly altered due to administrative updates. None of the changes were dramatic enough to raise immediate alarm, but together they created a blind spot large enough for the rescue fleet to exploit. The Phoenix made 5 more quantum jumps in rapid succession, each one precisely calculated to avoid detection. Elena marveled at the complexity of the operation. Years of preparation, countless beings risking everything, all to save a civilization the Confederation had deemed expendable. "Final jump complete," Crystal Song announced, entering the Ardani system. "Local spaces, highly energetic." That was an understatement. The view through the bridge viewport was terrifying. The Ardani star dominated the scene, its surface boiling with plasma storms that dwarfed entire planets. Solar flares larger than Earth's entire orbit whipped through space, carrying enough energy to scour worlds clean of life. "Multiple signals detected," Sarah reported. "The Ardani are still broadcasting their distress call, but I'm also picking up thousands of smaller transmissions. Their orbital habitats are breaking down under the stellar stress." Elena quickly began analyzing the new data. Their population is spread across 3 planets and 17 major space habitats. The planetary shields are prioritizing population centers, but they're losing ground. "We need to move fast." "Launch the beacon drones," Chen ordered. "Let's show them help has arrived." Dozens of small drones shot away from the Phoenix and its support ships, each carrying a quantum communicator. They positioned themselves in a precise geometric pattern around the system. And then, for the first time since entering Confederation space, the rescue fleet dropped its stealth fields. Elena sent the message she had spent weeks preparing, broadcasting it through the quantum network. The response was immediate. Thousands of Ardani ships that had been maintaining desperate holding patterns around their failing habitats turned toward them. Their transmissions flooded the communication channels, a mix of disbelief, hope, and desperate gratitude. They're running out of time faster than we thought, Elena reported, reading the incoming data. That last solar flare cracked the mantle of their smallest colony world. The shock waves will reach the other planets within hours. Chen nodded grimly. Then we do this the hard way. All ships, execute Rescue Protocol Alpha. Crystal Song, move us into position. Elena, send them the evacuation coordinates. Sarah, bring the quantum shields online. We're going to give them every second we can. The Phoenix's quantum shields sprang to life, creating a barrier of altered space-time that made the Confederation's best defensive technology look primitive. The support fleet spread out, each ship moving to protect critical evacuation routes. Sir, Sarah's voice was tense. Long-range sensors are picking up Confederation signatures. A lot of them. They must have detected us when we dropped stealth. How long until they arrive? At their best speed, 4 hours. We need at least 6 for a full evacuation. Chen's smile was grim. Then we better work fast. All ships, commence Operation Lighthouse. Let's show the galaxy what happens when we choose to act instead of observe. The rescue had begun. Now they just had to accomplish the impossible before the Confederation arrived to stop them, or their time ran out. The price of compassion. Time became a blur of desperate coordination and split-second decisions. Elena's fingers flew across her console as she helped direct the massive evacuation effort, coordinating between the rescue fleet and the Ardani ships. The Phoenix's quantum shields groaned under the assault of solar radiation that would have vaporized conventional vessels instantly. Habitat Complex 7 is breaking up, Sarah reported, her voice tight. Structural integrity failing across all levels. Redirect evacuation pods to emergency vectors, Chen ordered. Crystal Song, can you get us closer? The Rix navigator's crystalline form pulsed with effort as they maneuvered through the stellar hell. Negative. Another flare building. Any closer and even our shields won't hold. Elena watched in horror as the massive habitat began to tear itself apart. Thousands of life signs were still registered inside. We're not going to reach them in time, she whispered. Like hell, we won't. Sarah's hands moved across her tactical console. Father, permission to deploy the gravity anchors. Chen's eyes widened. They haven't been tested under these conditions. The power drain could leave us vulnerable when the Confederation arrives. If we don't act now, these people die. Isn't this why we built them? A ghost of a smile crossed Chen's face. Do it. The Phoenix's hull rippled as dozens of small devices launched toward the failing habitat. They surrounded the massive structure. And for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Elena's instruments registered something impossible, a localized bubble of stable spacetime, holding the habitat together against the forces trying to tear it apart. Gravity anchors holding at 70%, Sarah reported. We've bought them maybe 20 minutes. That's all we need. All evacuation craft. Converge on Habitat 7. Priority override on all safety protocols. We're going to get everyone out. Elena coordinated the rescue ships as they swarmed the stabilized habitat. The Ardani moved with desperate efficiency, their own vessels joining the effort despite the horrific conditions. She found herself in awe of their courage. Even facing extinction, they worked to save each other, not just themselves. Confederation fleet accelerating, Sarah announced. They'll be here in 3 hours, not 4. They're pushing their drives beyond safety limits. Let them come, Chen replied calmly. Focus on the evacuation. How many have we saved? Elena checked the numbers. 42% of total population across all habitats and colonies. The quantum tunneling networks are operating at maximum capacity, moving them to the safe zones we prepared. But, she hesitated. Speak freely, Doctor. The Ardani aren't just evacuating people. They're bringing their seed banks, their cultural archives, their historical records, everything they could save. They're treating this like the end of their civilization. Chen finished. They know they can never go home again. The least we can do is help them preserve what matters most. He turned to the tactical display. Sarah, status of the secondary fleet. In position and waiting. The Confederation ships won't know they're there until it's too late. Elena looked up sharply. Secondary fleet. Chen's expression was grim. Did you think we came all this way without a plan to protect these people after we saved them? The Confederation won't just let this go. They'll try to force the Ardani into designated refugee zones, under their control. We're not going to let that happen. A massive solar flare chose that moment to erupt, larger than any they'd seen yet. The Phoenix's shields flared brilliant purple as quantum fields struggled to deflect the inconceivable energies. Warning signals screamed across every console. Shield capacity at 30%. Sarah shouted over the alarms. We can't take another hit like that. Status of Habitat 7 evacuation. 93% complete, but the gravity anchors are failing. We've got minutes at most. Chen's voice remained steady. Crystal Song. Plot us a course between that flare and the habitat. Elena. Divert all power to the forward shields. Sarah. Call in our insurance policy. Space rippled around them as hidden quantum beacons activated. Elena's jaw dropped as ships began appearing. Hundreds of them, representing every species in their coalition. They had been waiting in quantum space, invisible and untraceable, ready to ensure the Ardani's freedom. Confederation fleet entering extreme sensor range, Sarah reported. They're broadcasting demands for our immediate surrender. They're saying we'll be treated as pirates and terrorists. Chen actually laughed. Send them our response. The same message, across all frequencies. Elena watched as a single word was transmitted. No. The Habitat's final evacuation ships cleared the danger zone, just as the gravity anchors failed. The massive structure broke apart in slow motion, its pieces scattering into the solar wind. But its people were safe, scared and homeless, but alive. 78% of total population evacuated, Elena reported, her voice thick with emotion. The rest are aboard either their own ships or vessels from the coalition fleet. We did it. We actually did it. Not yet, Chen corrected grimly. Now comes the hard part. The Confederation is about to learn that their way isn't the only way, and that compassion isn't weakness. All ships, battle positions. Let's introduce them to the coalition they never knew existed. The rescue fleet reformed, taking up defensive positions around the evacuated Ardani ships. Elena looked at the tactical display, watching as the Confederation warships approached. They had saved a civilization today, but the price of that compassion might be war. She glanced at the sensor readings from the Ardani star. In less than a week, it would go nova, destroying everything in the system. The Confederation had been willing to let an entire species die rather than bend their rules. Humanity had chosen a different path, and now they would face the consequences together with their allies. Whatever happens next, she said softly, we proved them wrong. We proved that emotions and empathy aren't weaknesses. They're the source of our greatest strength. Chen nodded, his eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. And now we show them just how strong compassion can make us. A new dawn. The Confederation fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect attack formation. Over 300 warships, representing the combined might of the galaxy's eldest civilizations. Their appearance was meant to inspire awe and submission. Instead, Elena felt only pity for them. They had no idea what they were actually facing. They're charging weapons, Sarah reported calmly. Targeting systems active. They're targeting the Ardani ships first. Of course they are, Chen said softly. They'd rather kill the survivors than admit they were wrong. He straightened in his command chair. Drop the stealth fields. All of them. Let them see exactly what they're dealing with. Space rippled as quantum fields dissolved, revealing the true extent of the Coalition fleet. For every Confederation warship, 3 Coalition vessels decloaked. The hidden ships emerged from quantum space like avenging angels, their advanced technology making the Confederation's vessels look primitive by comparison. The Confederation fleet's approach faltered. "They're sending a transmission," Elena announced. The High Council itself. The holographic projection that appeared above the bridge showed a being Elena recognized as First Speaker Valxis, one of the oldest living members of the Confederation's ruling body. His ancient eyes widened as he took in the bridge crew. Humans working alongside species that were supposed to be technological infants. "What is the meaning of this?" His voice thundered. "You dare to violate our most sacred laws. To conspire with other primitive species in direct defiance of. We dare to save lives," Chen interrupted, his voice quiet but carrying an authority that silenced the ancient being. "We dare to show compassion when you chose cold calculation. We dare to prove that cooperation is stronger than control. You have no right. We have every right." Chen's voice rose slightly. "You call us primitive because we still feel deeply, because we act on our emotions. But those emotions drove us to achieve what you thought impossible. Look around you, First Speaker, really look." Elena watched as data streamed to the Confederation fleet, specifications of the Coalition's technology, proof of innovations that the elder races had deemed impossible. The quantum drives, the stealth systems, the gravity anchors, all developed through cooperation between the species the Confederation had dismissed. "While you were maintaining your perfect order," Chen continued, "we were proving that passion and innovation aren't weaknesses. The Ardeni reached out across the stars, trusting that someone would care enough to help. We proved them right. And now we're going to prove something else." The Coalition fleet moved with perfect coordination, their formation shifting to create a barrier between the Confederation ships and the Ardeni refugees. Elena felt a surge of pride as she saw humans, Rix, Ven, and a dozen other species working in harmony, their combined technology creating a defense grid that made the Confederation's weapons look obsolete. "You have a choice," Chen told the First Speaker. "You can start a war you can't win, trying to maintain an order that deserves to fall. Or you can admit that your way isn't the only way. That maybe those emotions you dismissed as primitive are actually the key to the next stage of galactic civilization." A new signal caught Elena's attention. "Admiral," she called out, "I'm picking up transmissions from within the Confederation fleet." Ships were breaking formation. Not many, but enough to matter. Vessels crewed by younger races, by those who had never fully accepted the Confederation's rigid hierarchy. They moved to join the Coalition fleet, their crews choosing compassion over protocol. The First Speaker's image flickered as he received reports of the defections. For the first time in perhaps millennia, uncertainty showed in those ancient eyes. "The Nova will destroy this system in less than a week." Chen pressed his advantage. "The Ardani's worlds will die, but their civilization will live on. And how they live, whether as refugees under your control or as free people choosing their own path, that's the choice you face right now. What matters more, First Speaker, your rules or their lives?" Elena held her breath as the ancient being struggled visibly with the decision. The next few moments would determine whether the galaxy erupted in war or transformed into something new. Finally, the First Speaker spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of change. Perhaps we have grown too rigid in our wisdom, too certain in our judgments." He seemed to age centuries as he said it. "Stand down weapons. All ships, stand down." The tension on the bridge eased slightly, but Chen wasn't finished. "This isn't just about the Ardani. This is about every species you've dismissed, every civilization you've judged too primitive to trust with their own destiny. Things change today. You demand our surrender." There was a hint of the old steel in the First Speaker's voice. "No," Chen smiled. "We demand a conversation about a new way forward, where wisdom and emotion work together, where innovation isn't feared and compassion isn't seen as weakness. The Ardani won't be the last civilization to face extinction, but they will be the last to face it alone." The Coalition fleet began to move, escorting the Ardani ships toward the sanctuary worlds that had been prepared in secret. As they passed the Confederation vessels, their superior technology was impossible to ignore. The balance of power had shifted, not through violence, but through cooperation and shared purpose. "The Confederation will need time to adjust," the first speaker said finally, "to accept such radical change." "Time is one thing we're willing to give," Chen replied. "As long as you understand, the galaxy is changing. You can help guide that change, or you can be left behind by it. The choice is yours." After the transmission ended, Elena looked at the sensor readings from the Ardani star. Its final death throes were beginning, the stellar mass collapsing toward an inevitable explosion that would scatter its light across the galaxy. "Poetic, isn't it?" she mused. "One star dies, but its end marks the birth of a new era." "Not just an era," Chen replied, watching as Coalition and Confederation ships began tentative communications. "A new way of thinking." The Ardani reached out in trust and hope, believing someone would care enough to help. "We proved them right. Now we prove that compassion and innovation together can build something greater than control and stagnation ever could." As the combined fleet moved away from the dying star, Elena thought about the message that had started it all. A cry for help encoded in light and mathematics, cast into the cosmic dark in desperate hope. The Confederation had seen it as a problem to be documented. Humanity had seen it as a call to action. In the end, that made all the difference, not just for the Ardani, but for every species that had been waiting for a chance to prove that feeling deeply, caring profoundly, and acting on those emotions weren't weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be celebrated. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what they had been fighting for.